See, the hardest thing for me was leaving the life. I still love the life. And we were treated like movie stars with muscle. We had it all just for the asking. Our wives, mothers, kids, everybody rode along. I had paper bags filled with jewelry stashed in the kitchen. I had a sugar bowl full of Coke next to the bed. Didn't matter. Didn't mean anything. When I was broke, I would go out and rob some more. We ran everything. We paid off cops, we paid off lawyers, we paid off judges. Everybody had their hands out. Everything was for the taking. And now it's all over. And that's the hardest part. And today everything is different. There's no action. I have to wait around like everyone else. Can't even get decent food. Right after I got here, I ordered some spaghetti with marinara sauce, and I got egg noodles and ketchup. I'm an average nobody. I get to live the rest of my life like a schnook.
Greetings, friends. It's Chapo coming at you on Thursday, May 26th. And today we will be delving into an if not forgotten, then certainly largely unexamined piece of 90s lore that deals with celebrity scandal, the media, the police, sex work, pornography, a lot of things that have sort of, in many ways, uncannily sort of presaged the current moment we're living in. I'm talking, of course, about Hollywood Madam Heidi Fleiss, and joining us to discuss all things Hollywood Madam and scandal related is Molly Lambert, the creator and host of the Heidi World podcast. Molly, thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, I'm so excited to be here.
All right, so just to start on the broadest possible terms, for listeners, most of our listeners are 5 years old, so they may not have remembered the Hollywood Madam Heidi Fleiss and the sort of the tabloid-like fixation on her case and sort of infamy that happened in the 90s. So, in I guess in the broadest terms, like who was Heidi Fleiss, and how would you describe like the Heidi Fleiss scandal?
For sure, Heidi Fleiss was a Jewish girl from Los Angeles whose dad was a sort of pediatrician to the stars, kind of a new age pediatrician, and she ended up becoming this sort of party girl and then a madam when she was in her 20s. And then she sold sex to everybody in town and all over the world, and including some guys at movie studios. And the movie studio guys used movie studio checks to buy sex. And then she got busted, and they made a big show trial out of it, basically, to be like, you can't sell sex in Hollywood. How dare you? And to be kind of like, this could never happen again, make this all go away. And I'm from LA, so I was just always very interested in the story, but I think it was also the first time it ever occurred to me, like, hey, why is this illegal? Like, I remember just very strongly being like, hey, I don't understand, like, isn't a woman's body like her property? Can't she sell it if she wants to? And also, like, why aren't the guys buying sex getting in trouble? Like, why is only the person selling sex getting in trouble? So it was just the first time I thought about a lot of that stuff. And it was right at the same time as the OJ trial. It was like literally next door to the OJ Simpson trial. So I thought of them also as like, these are these two big trials in LA that were kind of like a couple years after the LA riots, and were meant to be sort of like, hey, LA's fine now, like, look over here, pay attention to this instead. And instead they both became kind of referendums on how much everybody hates the LAPD and how hypocritical, everyone in LA is about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay. Like, so there's a couple threads to pick up on. I guess I'd first like to dive into the way in which this kind of show trial and advertisement for the LAPD and Los Angeles itself happening right on the heels of like the Rodney King riots. Like, how did the LAPD use like Heidi Fleiss to, like, I don't know, rebrand themselves, or just like, hey, like, we're keeping the streets safe from, I don't know, the Hollywood producers paying for sex on official, Paramount Studios letterhead and checks.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think that's what they thought it would look like, was like we're cleaning up the streets. And you're seeing a lot of this stuff right now with like the Rick Caruso campaign, who's an absolute psycho, where, this kind of logic, like we're cleaning up the streets. Like, well, what does that mean? It means you're getting rid of sex workers and homeless people and everybody marginalized. So yeah, I think they thought this would be just like a great coup for the LAPD and for their publicity, and instead everybody was like, "Hey, we like Heidi. Heidi seems cool."
And speaking of the I guess like the LAPD's attitude here, there's a sort of like code that they used, which was NHI, which stood for No Human Involved. That was basically with the code for anytime a sex worker, homeless person, or gang member was murdered. It was NHI was officially just like in the LAPD itself, code for no human involved, not a real victim, don't need to care about it, not a taxpayer.
Right. So it's like then when they come with the Heidi Fleiss stuff, and they're talking this game about, oh yeah, we're trying to, like, we want to make sure women don't get hurt, and save the prostitutes, and then the prostitutes are all saying like, hey, we don't want to be saved, like we want safe working conditions and not to be arrested for doing our jobs.
Well, as long as you're talking about the police and their attempts to cover their own ass for their own incompetence, I mean, like, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up this latest example of what just happened in Texas right now, because I mean, like, that is the news story of the day, is the revelation that the heavily armed SWAT team of a town of like a few thousand people essentially allowed someone for about an hour to murder like 20 kids and
I
did
know.
absolutely nothing about it. And I'm just wondering, like, I don't know, what do you guys feel like? Is this going to undo all of like the sort of counter programming to like all the anger that people had about police, like in the wake of the George Floyd protests? And also, like, the thing I'm really like disgusted by is like the way that like a number of people have basically openly said, well, the cops would have intervened or put their lives on the line to save these kids, but like not enough people were willing to give them credit because like people have been so mean to them recently. So they're like,
I
okay,
think,
we could have stopped
God,
these kids from being killed, but like,
if only you'd been nicer to the cops, they would have done their job like they're supposed to. No, I mean, I think that you just find out that there are people who, like, you can show them a video of what is happening. That was the thing with the Rodney King trial, was there was literally fucking video footage of like this happening. And there are still people whose belief in the cops and whose belief in, like, fascism basically is so strong that they don't care what really happened. They just want, the narrative of like, well, the cops are the good guys, so they would have tried to do the good thing and somebody must have stopped them.
So, like, a lot of what I'm seeing is like, I don't know. I saw an argument from someone where I understood the point he was trying to make, where it's like, well, like that they responded like how normal people would if faced down with like an AR-15. Like his point was that AR-15s are like so uniquely dangerous that like anyone would just turn tail, basically, like the cops did. But it's like we saw what normal people would do, is the teachers that like ran into gunfire and died for their students. Like at some point, like people have to face up to the fact that like cops are more cowardly and more selfish than like any randomly selected American. Like, like definitely teachers in Texas, but like really anyone.
It's why they have to have a gun to leave the fucking house,
Yeah.
because they're fucking incredible pussies, and it
Well, because they need a stunt penis.
yeah.
They
If
need
they can't be,
a penis on the outside so everybody can see that they're carrying it around.
if they can't be assured by the law that any altercation they might get in their daily life will not be, they can't end that by just killing somebody and getting away with it, then they don't want to even have to deal with people. They don't have the spoons.
Yeah.
and also, like, I mean, just the angry, like, sort of like counter programming to like, American citizens and their totally justified anger at police killings is like, you don't understand how hard this job is. You don't understand that we put our lives on the line every day, and that if I fear for my life, I'm like wholly justified in just gunning down someone in that split second, if I fear for my life for even an instant. Well, look, that's what you get paid for, and that's why you have like the Swedish pension plan of like any fucking public worker. So like in a situation where like yeah, like we have cops who like theoretically so that you would have to put your life on the line and then you don't. It's sort of like, well, what the fuck? Like, if you want all to reap all the rewards of people never questioning you and always kissing your ass, when it comes time for you, like to like perhaps die in the line of duty, and then you don't fucking do it in a situation where, like, dozens of kids are being fucking killed. Like, what is the fucking point? Like, why are we giving you all of this military hardware and fucking like, guns and fucking body armor and shit if you're not gonna like use it?
I'm also in this group No Olympics, which I think we've been on before, talk about that. But it's like the Olympics in LA in 1984 also were like one of the first times they started kind of giving cops this full SWAT team military, taken from the IDF, literally like military training. We've just seen it get crazier and crazier since then, right? It's like they're always just like, okay, we gave him a cool tank now, everything's going to be fine. And yeah, you've just seen time after time that like they don't do shit, and the more stuff they have to cause violence, like the more violence there will just be. And I think like I don't know, I think in a situation like the thing that just happened in Texas, that's such a fucking tragedy, where it's like people have this fantasy about like how it'll go, of like the cops will save everybody, and then that doesn't happen. And the idea that it could be because the cops are like bad, or like it just becomes this sort of like, well, it's a senseless tragedy, nobody could have done anything.
Well, I mean, the cops were doing something. They were pepper
They're
spraying and
using that.
tasing the parents who were trying to save their kids. I mean, it's like it's just indescribable. Like it's just like yeah, you have all that the body armor and lethal force to arrest like a teenager for smoking weed, but then like to prevent a mass murder or something like that, it's just like, oh well, I feared for my life, so I wasn't going to do anything.
No, we just live in fucking RoboCop world, and it is a nightmare.
I could just imagine like they were all outside looking at the building, and they all know that they pussied out. They all know that everything they think about themselves and everything that they get told by culture every day is true about themselves is a lie. And there they are, just standing with their dick in their hand, getting all colicky. But then, ooh, they see the parents getting upset and like running. Oh, great! Now I know what to do. Just fucking bust out some pepper spray and take out all of that anxiety on them. I don't have to think about it if I can do the one thing I know how to do, which is just push people around
Right, and
with
it's just like
zero threat to myself,
it's
zero
such a fucked
danger.
up situation, and for the cops to come in and make it even more fucked up somehow, it's just like it's unfathomably bad.
These people, like, they won't lose their jobs. Like, they won't even be like transferred or anything. And again, like, literally, if this equivalent situation happened with literally any other type of person, like if an auto mechanic was in a situation where like his not changing tires like got 19 children killed, like anyone would kill themselves out of shame by like now.
You'd think.
But these guys won't. None of them will.
No, they're all American heroes now.
I mean, like, yeah, like it's just like I had to bring this up like in the context because like I was like researching the Heidi Fleiss case, and then like I was like I said interested by the way in which that this became like such a media promoted spectacle in a way to kind of
For
like
sure.
exonerate the police department
Yeah.
for like their role in
And part of the reason they busted her was because she didn't bribe the cops, which is what every other madam did. Every madam in history in LA had a special relationship with the LAPD where they provided them with free girls and, gave them a kickback. And Heidi didn't do that because she didn't like the cops, because a friend of hers had been murdered just by a random dude who was like a serial rapist. She was like showing an apartment, and this guy raped and murdered her. And Heidi was like, okay, like I need the cops to find the guy who murdered my friend. And then kind of realized they weren't going to do anything.